Okay, so this video is another one of, I guess, my random ideas for the day. Uh, so I've been reading B. Alan Wallace and listening to him. I'm probably going to add a link to some of his stuff on this video. Um, he's a very interesting speaker, um, and some of the things he posits are very interesting, such as his theory is that consciousness actually exists before our brains do. In other words, he's kind of promoting the belief of a soul in a way. Um, Not any kind of immortal soul, but definitely some kind of spiritual essence that makes us up. And he basically advocates reincarnation and souls and spirituality through a greater framework. And he relates this framework that he claims, and I think this is true. I've read this. I haven't cross-referenced this, but I've read what he's saying in other texts, including Ken Wilber and Alan Watts and many other writers, and including mystics and writers themselves, like people who have actually experienced this stuff. Um, but he basically claims that there is some kind of underlying spiritual force dimension to reality. Maybe not underlying, perhaps you can say overlying, you know. Um, and instead of organic matter, physical, empirical, the observable universe is in a way tapping into that, and always a part of that is at the same time. Um, so basically, he's claiming there's a higher dimension to reality, and this is a more spiritual dimension, and human beings somehow, or evolution somehow, has evolved to be able to tap into this consciousness or spirituality and sort of bring it down into the brain, the mind. It's almost as if consciousness can be, in an analogy, consciousness is light, pure light, right, from the sun. And it it's everywhere. It's permeating the entire solar system, and life has found a way to tap into this light. It has gained the eye to see, and that eye is sort of like the mind to consciousness, if that makes sense. Um, just as we have developed eyes to be able to see and use light, so has our brains, our very minds, developed to use consciousness, to use awareness. Um, of course, since since the eye, if you look, if we or let's go further with this example of the eye molds light in a certain way. It reflects light in a particular way. It doesn't see it objectively. It sort of molds it according to its own pattern and structure. It tries to be objective with it, but it has its own goals. The eye has particular things it's looking through for light, and because of this, the same thing can be said about the mind. The mind is tapping into this light or consciousness, and it has certain goals for it. So it refracts and reflects the light or consciousness in particular ways. So in other words, the mind is, you can almost see it as a particular kind of eye or a set of mirrors which reflect and mold and condition this pure light into particular ways we experience this I-ness to be, this awareness to be. And in that sense, this higher consciousness um, is sort of a greater aspect to the universe. It is a more complete one that we're kind of growing to become aware of somehow. And I just found myself to resonate very very strongly with that. Whether or not it's true, I don't. I tend to agree with it because based off my own experiences and my own ideas about consciousness, it seems to make sense. Now, Ken Wilber has actually gone so far as to say that this sort of light consciousness, I'm going to just call this light consciousness from the rest of the video, is in all things. It is shining in all things. It's everywhere. Certain things are able to kind of tap into it and make it its own. So that would mean that, the plant I have here, or the bacteria that's in the air, or any kind of animal or creature or pet, has a sense of I-ness going on, but it's refracted, it's molded. The light shines through this particular construct in a particular way. So, I mean, that kind of like, almost tripped me out there. That kind of almost means, I mean, does it mean that, even a frog has a sense of self? I mean, that even is quite amazing. Perhaps not as sophisticated as us at all, but it suddenly begins to make sense why Ken Wilber would say something like, all things have consciousness. Everything has consciousness. Even the rock. It's just that we've evolved to resonate at a higher frequency, to be able to tap into it more pure, or something to that extent. Um, so this is what B. Alan Wallace is saying, and it's very interesting because it also relates to emanation, which is sort of unity consciousness fragmenting into splitting and splitting and splitting. 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 6, just kind of fragmenting into reality, and to the point where it's fragmented into this complex reality that we experience today. And interestingly enough, the goal of spirituality, so to speak, according to the mystics, is to kind of see beyond the world of forms, see beyond the world of fragments, trace them back to their source, which ends up being much more simplistic, yet at the same time much more profound than all of the complexity in the universe. So I find an interesting analogy here between science and religion, because science is too trying to find, and has always been trying to find, some kind of universal theory, some kind of symmetrical, beautiful equation, and they've always looked for it. E equals mc squared, for instance. String theory, even that's very complex, but the idea is quite simple. A string vibrating different particles. They're looking for this simplistic essence of the universe, and we've always been searching for that. So I find it interesting that both science and religion have been yearning for this kind of greater meaning that is both simple, transcendent, and inclusive of all the complexity. Um, and we've kind of been evolving throughout history to try to do that, it seems, or at least that's been a part of history. Um, so I just find that very interesting about what B. Alan Wallace is saying. Um, he definitely has very good points about this. I need to read more of the book, obviously, but it's begun to really sink in, and this has actually been helping the big sit meditation thing that's been going on as well. Really puts things in perspective, kind of like hits you like a koan, and makes you start thinking or contemplating. And in the same sense, it kind of makes you sort of feel more connected to everything. If this consciousness is literally pouring down, and this kind of construct of, the self, what I'm experiencing is relative and almost not totally illusory, but um, not all that there is, this sort of greater consciousness is, it helps you move beyond yourself. It helps you really kind of feel more connected to people. And not even just people, but even, pets and plants, and just suddenly you just feel this kind of connection. If we are all part of this eminent light, fragmenting into all things, then we can all trace our roots back to the source, back to the ultimate isness. Um, that's very it's very profound. It really has moved me. Um, and one more thing, I guess, in relation to quantum physics and science and religion, he also mentioned the realm of potentialities. That in quantum physics is space. Space, being a void, somehow is full of potential, more full of potential than any place in the universe that has, a star or an Earth. For some reason, the void is super, super, um, almost combustive. It should be exploding with potential energy, more so than anything else in the universe. And it's fascinating. Just a void is more powerful than anything in the universe that we know of. So that brings to mind, at least as Alan Wallace has mentioned, the void in Buddhism. Emptiness is form, form is emptiness, is ultimate creation and destruction, manifestation through total emptiness and purification. So thanks for listening, and feel free to respond. I'd love to talk about all this stuff.